For centuries, explorers have been lured by the secrets of the sea. Whether they were navigators on long voyages through unknown waters, divers eager to solve a shipwreck mystery, or part of an expedition sailing to far frozen lands, these explorers have faced serious survival challenges. The tales of the sea and ice are not for the faint-hearted. Pytheas, ancient Greek explorer, 4th century BCE. Sailing northwards from his Greek colony, Pytheas visited wind-battered islands where people dug deep into the earth for metal. He later wrote about his trips, although only scraps of this record survive. His tales of strange northern landscapes where days lasted longer sounded more like stories from Greek myths than real places. Nothing is known about Pytheas's youth, but in around 330 BCE he set off on an expedition northwards. The people of his home city of Massalia, now Marseille, France, used weapons, pots, and other objects made out of a metal called tin. This material came from abroad, and Pytheas may have been looking for new ways to transport it. His ship was probably a huge Greek warship called a trireme. These could cover almost 90 kilometers, 56 miles, in a day. A warship would have been an amazing sight for many of the people Pytheas met on his travels, who used tiny boats made from woven plant material and animal skin. Pytheas kept within sight of coastlines and used the position of the sun to work out how far north he was. He reached a land of tin miners within a few months, Britain. Pytheas explored the country on foot, finding out about the lives of its people who were ruled over by kings. He was also the first to roughly work out the distance around Britain's coast. Pytheas then claimed to have sailed north until he reached a place bordered by icy ocean that seemed to be at the edge of the world. He called it Thule. The summer sun shone above Thule for most of the day and night. When the sun did set, beautiful green lights sometimes filled the sky, the Northern Lights. Pytheas wrote a book called On the Ocean about his northern journey, and another about a second trip to the Elbe and Rhine rivers in what is now Germany. While traveling, he also became the first person to notice that the moon is linked to the tides. Much of what the ancient Greeks knew about northern Europe was thanks to Pytheas. The route north. Pytheas began in Massalia, which is now Marseille, France. He sailed around Spain, along the Portuguese and French coasts, and on to the British Isles. He is said to have then gone on to Thule, which is thought to be modern-day Iceland. He passed through the Pillars of Hercules, 2 points of high land at either side of the Strait of Gibraltar. His first landing in Britain is thought to have been Cantian, which is now Kent. On the Shetland Islands he was told of the mysterious land of Thule, which might have been Iceland. Pytheas wrote about the Northern Lights, and an ocean full of ice around Thule. Leif Erikson, Viking explorer of North America, circa 970 to circa 1020. The Viking Leif Erikson and his crew were the first Europeans known to have set foot on North American soil. We know about Leif's tale from Icelandic sagas, which are a mixture of history and made-up stories. Leif was the son of Eric the Red, who was exiled from Iceland after arguing with and killing a number of neighbors. So, when Leif was just a child, he and his family sailed to a deserted land that Eric called Greenland. There are several stories about Leif's journey to North America. In the Saga of the Greenlanders, a grown-up Leif hears about the misty shores of an unexplored land from a trader. Leif gathered a crew and sailed westwards to find it. They arrived at a grassless rocky area thought to be Baffin Island, Canada. Sailing on took them to a forested land, possibly Labrador, Canada, and finally a place where grapevines were found. Grapes were used to make wine in Europe, and Leif called the area Vinland, or Wineland. They built wooden houses and stayed for one winter, feasting on the large salmon found in that part of the world. After returning home, Leif's stories of Vinland led a group of Vikings to return to the settlement. They stayed for a few years, meeting Native Americans who they traded with and occasionally fought. Almost 1,000 years later, the remains of Viking buildings that may have been part of the Vinland settlement were discovered in Newfoundland, Canada. The Journey West. Leif's journey from Greenland to North America may have gone first to Baffin Island, on to Labrador, and then to Newfoundland. Who were the Vikings? The Vikings were people from the Scandinavian countries of northern Europe between the 8th and 11th centuries. Their violent raids on settlements and monasteries earned them a bad reputation. People became so scared of the Vikings that they simply handed over their belongings. However, the Vikings were also explorers who settled in new lands and traded with other nations. L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada, dates back to the time of the Vinland settlement in Leif's story. Leif and his crew would have sailed on a traditional Viking longship.